two signs that we have on the back wall here, vision and technology. I think Tendor and I will talk about the vision, what our vision is for the future of our movement as Tibetans, as Tibet supporters, as activists, not just from the SFT perspective, Students for a Free Tibet, but from the global perspective, for all people, all pieces of our movement. And then a little later, and we will talk a little bit about technology, and then later Nathan and Mike will give you an idea of the power of technology, and in a way, how in this nonviolent battle with China, with the Chinese government for Tibetan freedom and human rights, how technology is one of our greatest nonviolent weapons, and how the Tibetan movement, certainly SFT, we believe that by using technology wisely, creatively, and really strategically, we can actually, we have a lot of power, and we can make great change and help improve the situation on the ground inside Tibet, and actually change the situation on the ground inside Tibet. But we'll just start right away. So I will speak for a little while. Tendor will speak. Tendor will speak mostly in Tibetan because there's a lot of people here who understand Tibetan better, and so we will speak to both audiences. And if you understand both, that's great. You'll get to hear something a little different from each of us. Before the Olympics, we traveled the world for some years, talking to a lot of different audiences, talking to Tibetans, talking to young people, non-Tibetans, students, people in India, in Europe, in Canada, all over. And we were so focused on this moment, how to make the moment when China, and the lead up to when China hosted the Olympic Games, the most that it could be for Tibet. So we focus, we talk, and then suddenly the Olympics are over. The 50th commemoration, in a way, has come and gone, 50 years of occupation, and we're regrouping, and we're looking at all the different paths in front of us and sort of evaluating, where do we go now? How do we do this? A lot of people would say, well, you should have figured that out a long time ago. I guess the truth for us is we have a plan, we have a long-term plan as young Tibetan activists, as Students for a Free Tibet, but in a way, everything has changed. And though right now it seems like perhaps things have not changed for the better, because the situation on the ground inside Tibet is so tough, so bad. It's a dark time. I think it's wrong to believe that overall we're in a worse position. We're in a stronger position. Things have improved. It's just hard to see it in this moment. And what we hope to do right now is illustrate why we believe that to be true, and also what we think we need to do moving forward. If you think about where we were before the Olympics, and I'll just talk a little bit about where we were, where we are now and where we need to go. If you think about where we were before the Olympics and before the uprising of March 2008, it's like another world. Tibet was an issue for the Chinese government, certainly an important issue, but not the #1 issue. And as we approached the Olympics, the years counting down, 3, 2, 1, we were traveling the world trying to get people really, in some way, ready, trained, prepared to wage this Olympics campaign. But overall, the world, the international community, global political leaders, were not seeing Tibet as a huge issue. People were questioning what would China do, how would China deal with the issue of Tibet, human rights, democracy, advocates in China, Falun Gong, Taiwan. But it was really not anything that felt like a global pressing concern. And then overnight in Tibet, Tibetans changed that. And not just Tibetans in Lhasa, and not just a group of monks, but Tibetans from one end of the country to the other, from all 3 provinces, not just in the TAR, as China likes to call Tibet, but all Tibetan territory, historical land. Tibetans changed history. And Tibetans stood up, said clearly, we want freedom, we want human rights, we want the Dalai Lama to come back. He is our only and rightful leader. And essentially 6 million Tibetans challenged the empire that is China in a way that nobody else has. In a way that no government is willing to do, in a way that no corporation certainly would do, or any people at this time. 6 million Tibetans on the lonely plateau did it, and with such bravery and such courage, and with an incredible amount of restraint and control. 135 or so protests in that first month, in the month of March, and only a handful, like 2 or 3, really ended up in any kind of human-to-human violence. There was some property destruction in a number of places, but overall, Tibetans were incredibly restrained, considering all that has been brought down on the heads and the backs of Tibetans for 60 years. So, you know, we end up now in a place where people say, well, what have you really gained? I'm sure you hear this, we hear this all the time. So after it's all said and done, Tibetans inside are living in terrible conditions right now. There's such a climate of fear. People have disappeared. At least 1,000 people are missing, disappeared. We say some 200 are dead. It's definitely more than that. We just can't get the exact numbers because of how tightly controlled Tibet is right now. So from, you know, for all of us, I think it's a struggle not to, you know, to keep your hopes up and your spirits up. When you look inside, especially people in this room who have lots of family and friends inside Tibet, it's very difficult not to be depressed. But I think if you step back and if you look at, you know, the situation from a wider perspective and from an historical perspective, you see, you know, 6 decades after China took control of Tibet, 6 million Tibetans are still fighting. And not only are Tibetans still fighting and still maintain their Tibetanness and still have some strength in the face of this incredible might that is China, but an entire new generation of Tibetans now has the spirit, has the resolve, has the living memory inside Tibet and outside of what it means to be Tibetan, and how Tibetans are different and distinct from Chinese, and from how Tibet as a nation is distinct and different from China. And that's very important. Obviously the struggle has to go on for some time. We don't know exactly how long. And we need every generation, especially the youngest ones, to feel it in their, you know, in their hearts. There's a Tibetan farmer who was interviewed by a journalist from Beijing around the time of the Tibetan New Year in February. And what he said was so poignant. He said, you know, now it's not just me. Now it's my sons and my grandchildren. They will carry it on long after I'm gone. And I think this is true. Our young people here, you know, our little ones growing up in New York City, of all places, have a memory of watching Lhasa burn and feeling, you know, those emotions and that connection to that far-off land. And so just on that level alone, people from inside Tibet and China, Tibetans living in China and Tibet have described it, I've heard a number of times, like people woke up inside. Because we know not every Tibetan inside Tibet and China is very political or politicized or expresses their political views. This is just not the way it is. It's quite natural, I think, especially considering the danger if you do say or do anything political.
Sadari bukate ye